The notorious Washington area sniper, John Allen Muhammad, who was one of them, terrorized Washington in 2002, randomly killing 10 people. Well, tonight, he's scheduled to die. Muhammad feel anything?
Well, he probably won't feel anything.
There's a feeling I get when I look to the west, and my spirit is crying for leaving. In my thoughts I have seen rings of smoke through the trees.
Well, I believe that the death penalty is appropriate in certain circumstances. There are extraordinarily heinous crimes, terrorism, the harm of children, in which it may be appropriate. Obviously, we've had some problems in this state in the application of the death penalty.
Every one of you watching this screen, look out, because soon, very soon, the most horrifying monster menace ever conceived will be oozing into this theater.
Today we're taking a look at the history of capital punishment in the United States.
I never know exactly how to make my opinion clear, because I object to all punishment whatsoever. I don't want to punish anybody. But there are an extraordinary number of people whom I want to kill. Not in any unkind or personal spirit, but it must be evident to all of you, you must all know half a dozen people at least, who are no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. And I think it would be a good thing to make everybody come before a properly appointed board, just as he might come before the income tax commissioners, and say every 5 years or every 7 years, just put him there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social boat, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive.
The idea of killing as a form of retribution for one's crimes dates back centuries, but was imported to America by British settlers during the colonial era.
Huntsville, Texas. Lethal injection capital of the world, where more prisoners are legally put to death than in any other American prison. During the 1980s and 90s, Texas became the world's leading executioner.
Certainly, there's no secret that we have the most active death row, the most active death chamber in the country.
Lethal injection is rapidly becoming the preferred method of execution throughout the United States. Critics believe that it is far from painless, and that it can take a long time to complete the procedure. Larry Fitzgerald disagrees.
I can tell you how long it takes for the chemicals to work. We executed an inmate by the name of Jonathan Nobles, and he apologized and recited scripture as his final statement. He had told the warden the signal to start the process would be when he started singing, and he sang Silent Night. And when he got to mother and child, he was dead.
After centuries of brutal executions, the quest for the most humane method of ending human life continues. It's been a long, dark journey. Thousands of years ago, as early civilizations developed, conflicts threatened the survival of communities. Chieftains and leaders were called upon to hear grievances and make judgments. Gradually, codes of conduct were drawn up, And along with these early laws came the concept of punishment. In almost all societies, the punishment for the worst crimes was death. The first tools of execution probably included fists, sticks, and stones.
Well, with stoning, it's almost instantaneous. If the community decides that someone is guilty of something, the community usually will take it upon themselves almost immediately, almost in the form of a lynching.
Although stoning was used on both sexes, it was predominantly used on women and people convicted of heresy, sorcery, and witchcraft. Some early cultures believed that criminal behavior was a manifestation of demonic possession, that the evil spirits could be transmitted through personal contact. Stoning became an effective method of killing at a distance, where a mob would continue to hurl stones at the condemned, eventually causing death by trauma. In the Bronze Age, the development of metal began a new chapter in death devices. In military executions, the sword was used to decapitate people found guilty of treason, cowardice, or mutiny. Ancient Rome introduced the practice of execution as public entertainment, where condemned men and women were sentenced to combat animals or gladiators before crowds of spectators. The Romans also introduced crucifixion and the idea of death compounded by prolonged physical suffering. Victims of the cross could take days or even weeks to die.
Crucifixion, a soldier would strap them up, and the community would come by and be able to stone them, stab them, break their bones, and generally it would take quite some time to die. Dehydration or muscle collapse would suffocate them.
Some 300 years after the death of Christ, the Roman Emperor Constantine abolished crucifixion after his conversion to Christianity. Throughout the Middle Ages, the axe became the blade of the medieval criminal courts, and its widespread use created a new position in the state, that of the headsman, the first executioner. But execution by blade was a crude and messy business. There was still a lot that could go wrong.
In medieval times, it was not uncommon for a person being executed to have to bribe the headsman to make sure that his aim was true and his blade was sharp. God help you if you had a headsman who didn't like you, because he might take more than one stroke to do the job.
In the 16th century, during the Holy Inquisition, numerous death and torture devices were developed. 2 survived to become official execution methods in Europe. Both were slow, horrible ways to die. Burning at the stake was made famous by the execution of Joan of Arc. Breaking on the wheel became widely used all over Europe, especially in Germany and France. Breaking on the wheel involved binding the nude victim, man or woman, flat or upright on a giant wooden wheel. As the wheel was rotated, several executioners wielding heavy metal clubs and hammers smashed the victim's limbs, joints, and skull. This brutal method would eventually be replaced by a new mechanical device, which was supposed to be quick and painless. Next, the strange story of the guillotine.
Capital punishment, a consequence for a heinous crime. To what extent do you think one should pay for a heinous crime? To reference the sniper's execution and others waiting on death row, do you think the punishment should fit the crime? How long is too long to wait for an actual execution? Do you believe in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, revenge, a repayment for an unremorseful wrongful death? Do you hold one crime higher than the other? Do you think the state should just pass a life sentence on a murderer or hold him or her for a year or so and carry out their execution then? Maybe it is a way to fully punish the murderer and rid society of such a character. You can't really replace a loved one, and you can't be sure you're really punishing a murderer by killing him. Maybe we are sure that we would be ridding our wonderful world of a person who could commit such a crime. But what do you think? Should we just hang him high